Zulu, 1964, directed and written for the screen by Cy Enfield, and it's a very famous movie, and the cast is prodigious. We've got Stanley Baker, Lieutenant John Chad, James Booth plays Private Henry Hook, Jack Hawkins is the Reverend Otto Witt, Yule Jacobson plays Margaret Witt, and Michael Caine, in one of his first roles, is Lieutenant Gonville Bromhead. Nigel Green in the support, Eric Grohl, Paul Damon, Glinda Edwards, Patrick McGee, and it was a 135-minute film, and it was applauded for the debut by one Michael Caine. Right, the story is based on a loose interpretation of the infamous day in 1897 when 40,000 Zulus in Natal province, South Africa, attacked a British regiment for no apparent reason and killed all of them, 1,500 men. What followed was another attack on 105 British troops, and of course we're no longer in a position to accurately state that this happened, given the fact that the media is constantly allied with the establishment, and lies are sort of 10 a penny. But anyway, I haven't watched this movie in 40 years, so I'm gonna have a look at it now. So Dennis Schwartz review. Cy Enfield, very much an overlooked and very talented blacklisted American director who emigrated to England in the 50s. It's a no-nonsense epic masterpiece, and features an heroic battle in British history. This fictionalized account is visually the best of such films that were made. Heroism, military planning, and they fight for survival. Richard Burton is the narrator who describes on that infamous day what happened, and what we open with a scene where the Swedish missionary Otto Witt, played by Hawkins, and his daughter are at a mass wedding of warriors as the guests of a Zulu chieftain who's a parishioner of which church. A Zulu messenger arrives to tell of the massacre of British troops and the taking of their rifles. The Wits flee to warn the men stationed at the Rorke's Drift outpost of the impending danger to the 105 others, urging them to flee. Movie The End, released in 2024, directed by Joshua Oppenheimer, who was also responsible for the writing. What other things to note? The script, the cast. Tilda Swinton plays mother, Michael Shannon plays father, George McKay is son, Moses Ingram is the girl, and Lenny James plays the doctor. Tim McInerney is the butler. It runs at 148 minutes. Art house film. This director, previously a documentary director, The Act of Killing, market update, and it's described by this critic, who I regularly read the reviews, as overlong, dreary and overbearing. It's an oddball, post-apocalyptic musical with the end of civilization. Music by Joshua Smith, the composer, in a story that's set in an underground bunker where a wealthy family has boarded up with their cultural valuables. Despite the grim circumstances, the world's being destroyed by fire. These people are privileged try to act as if everything is fine. Swinton is a former ballerina. The delusional son McKay was born and raised in the bunker. They've got comfortable living quarters. Let's get on with it. There's an opening phrase after the credits. The houses are all gone under the sea. The dancers are all gone under the hill. I don't know where the fucking sweets have gone. ...2025 movie Opus, described as an American thriller, written and directed by Mark Anthony Green. It's his debut as a director. It stars Avo Edinburgh. When we get to the cards, Avo Edinburgh is Ariel Epson, a journalist. John Malkovich plays Alfred Moretti, a pop superstar from the 90s. Juliette Lewis plays Claire Armstrong. She's a talk show host. Murray Bartlett plays Stan Sullivan, Ariel's boss. Melissa Chambers plays Bianca Tyson. She's a member of the paparazzi. Tony Hale is Soledad Youssef. And there's a few other notables in the cast. The basic plot is the 90s superstar comes out of retirement to announce his new album, creates a media firestorm. Moretti invites 6 guests to attend a listening party at his Utah compound. They include journalist Ariel, a boss Stan, talk show host Clara, influencer Emily, paparazzi Bianca, and radio shock jock Bill. Upon arriving at the compound, it becomes apparent that Moretti is part of a cult calling themselves Levelists, and the other occupants at Moretti's compound wear identical uniforms and behave strangely. While Moretti wins over the other guests, Ariel is suspicious and starts to investigate the cult. And that's about it. A special guest, 6 of them I think, delivered to this superstar's compound via airplane, private plane and bus. And as they arrive outside the compound, there's numerous fans causing a bit of a distraction, and then eventually arrive at the superstar's compound. And shortly after he arrives, John Malkovich that is, and delivers extravagant story for them all to try to, well, I guess, create an atmosphere unique. The story involving Chuck Norris and Muhammad Ali is fantasy. Well, that's my interpretation. As we are witnessing a cult, the invited guests are expected, or at least have to consider certain rituals, one of which is giving the guests a makeover, which includes shaving their pubic hair before they can take them to a private performance from Moretti. One assumes that Moretti may be AC/DC, but certainly is likely to want some sexual encounter with some of the women, and this we follow as we follow Ariel. She is becoming more and more uncomfortable, really. And there now appears one short, as Bill hasn't made it back from the massacre. The guests are then invited to sample one of the songs on the album, Moretti's album, and he dances to the signature tune, and it's provocative and very sexual in nature. The girl journalist sits and witnesses this and is somewhat taken aback. The others seem to be enlightened, inspired. Ariel is outside discussing with her boss Stan about the cult, the clan, etc. And it is expressing her sort of anxiety, really. And Stan is unperturbed, but then almost out of the blue, is shot by an arrow through the heart. It is sold as an accident by a young boy playing with a bow and arrow. But it's pretty sort of dramatic. The last 20 odd minutes of this movie actually descends into carnage, which I guess reflects how cults lose a sense of moral dignation, moral justification, and it really degenerates into a sort of action thriller with no thrills, but just garbage. I couldn't make head and tail of it. So to 1964, Zulu. Looking at the credits, there's some fantastic support in cast with Patrick McGee, Paul Damon, Nigel Green, and of course introducing Michael Caine. The last time I saw this movie was a very, very long time ago. I would suggest 40 years. So it's history. 1879. Zulus in South Africa rebelling against the British forces stationed there, and a memo from February of that year informing the Secretary of State for War about the slaughter of the British troops. And the film is going to put on record that, although it's not factually correct 100%, but then given the state of truth and false truths and fake news, and I'm sure we can cope with the fact that the British government's interpretation of what happened on that day is unlikely to be presenting a truthful account of what actually took place. The movie opens with a battlefield strewn with British troops, all dead, as the Zulu walk amongst them to collect perhaps trinkets, symbols of victory. We then sweep back to an event in the Zulu calendar where they're celebrating marriage, multiple marriage, and we hear the dialogue between Jack Hawkins and his daughter. Now, these two force me to quickly have a look at. He's a reverend, is Hawkins, and his daughter, it may be a wife, but I don't think so, is Ulla Jacobson, and they're Swedish missionaries. And they see the intricacies of the warriors, and there's some discussion between them about monogamy, about old men marrying young women. And this happens at a time when the slaughter is taking place elsewhere. That's courtesy of my script. So if we just Reverend Otto Witt, Stanley Baker is the Lieutenant John Shadd, James Booth Private Henry Hook, Michael Caine plays Lieutenant Gronville Bromhead, and anyway, let's move on. The two religious fraternity, they are first to hear the massacre of 1,000+ troops, which is celebrated, somewhat muted, it has to be said, but celebrated by the Zulu warriors. The British troops are sort of sitting around waiting for something to happen, and then we get the first dialogue between Caine and Baker. They are of a similar rank, of course, as officers, and Baker uses some of Caine's men to do some work, and he is reminded of that by Caine, who has that typical sort of upper middle class accent of rank and superiority. Lovely. With a movie like this, it's important to grasp some scenes which sort of put it into some context as to a lovely little scene involving Private Owen, who's played by Ivor Emmanuel, who I remember was a singer, and he's talking with Baker, Lieutenant Chad, and the brief discussion focuses on the impact of the hot and dusty weather, on the ability to sing, in the context that one of Owen's choir members or singers is doing some heavy shift work with the wood rafts. Lovely. And the actor, I can recall, my father mentioned him. This part of the movie is actually the aftermath of the massacre of 1500, and this is where this Welsh regiment, I think, are sort of the give the British viewpoint for what it's worth. Baker, having been informed of the massacre, then needs to inform Chad, and the dialogue brings out the first racial slur by Caine playing Chad, who can't believe that they were all slaughtered. Baker then chips in, sort of suggesting that the orders from above were made by a rich kid out of Sandhurst. So we get a sort of a flavour of the hierarchy in the military, and I suppose it's a soft way of trying to respond to what we saw in Paths of Glory 7 years earlier in that script. In response to the inevitable loss to the overwhelming number of Zulu, the movie focuses on little private sort of promotions, authority, etc., and also a very amusing debate about the Welsh regiment having to clarify people other than by name, given the fact that there are so many people with the surname Jones. It's quite amusing. We also get an insight into the fact that even sick, injured men will be expected to fight. Some Afrikaan farmers come through, and the British forces immediately anticipate that they're going to help. They're going to at least increase their odds, but quickly that's dashed as the farmers ride off, saying, "It's your fight, not ours." A real smack, really, in the face for colonialism. With the Zulu army, is that the right word, on the move, heading towards these 100+ men, we get a sort of sense of how it would be when we hear the sound of movement of a large number of bodies. It sounds almost like a train moving, and their target are these men, and they are aware that they are doomed. The director's trying to string out the time to get a picture of this sense of imminent death in the face of battle for the country. We witness numerous Zulu warrior rituals as they approach the British soldiers. They are everywhere, of course, but the British soldiers, of course, true to their stoic sort of behaviour, very much into their own set of rituals as well. Strange sort of movie. The combat continues one-on-one, as slowly but surely the British soldiers, outnumbered, perish amidst the onslaught of the Zulu army. The combat caught my eye. It was almost like it's done in a sort of correct fashion, a polite fashion, as the bayonet is thrust into the Zulu's chest, or alternatively the Zulu's spirit is pierced into the British soldier, somehow trying to make it look well done as a consequence of good training. By the film's final battle, the Zulu warriors return to the hilltops and salute the British soldiers as fellow warriors before they return to their villages, acknowledging defeat, with most of them men killed. As a result of this battle, 11 British were awarded the Victoria Cross, the highest number of men to receive that honour since Britain first gave it out. Burton announces that there have been 1,344 such medals given out overall. The two leads, Caine and Baker, worked well together despite their class differences, with Chad showing a natural ability to think fast and act without indecision. There's a certain fascination about this movie, especially in watching the Zulus perform under Enfield's direction. The Zulus never ever saw a movie before, and it wasn't until Enfield showed them a Gene Autry ota that they knew what he was talking about and were able to go along with his directing. The Zulu is presented in a tough-minded and matter-of-fact way. It was also an interesting bit of casting by the co-producers, Enfield and Baker, of having the Cockney Caine play a stuffy upper-class Englishman. But it worked, and Caine was just splendid. It's still one of his finest hours in film. As the Zulu retreats, this follows a roll call that's poignant. But one of the final scenes, an exchange of feelings about having survived between Baker and Caine is fantastic. We then hear the narration by one Richard Burton, and as he reads out those names that received the Victoria Cross. Another very poignant moment. Right, I'm going to watch The Brutalist. This is the movie that won the Oscar a couple of weeks back. 2024 epic period drama, directed and produced by Brady Corbett, who co-wrote the screenplay with Mona Fast-Boyd. Adrian Brody is in the lead role as a Jewish Hungarian architect and Holocaust survivor who immigrates to the United States, where he struggles to achieve the American dream. The cast also features Felicity Jones, Guy Pearce, Joey Alwyn, Alfred Cassidy, and a few others. Okay, so let's get to it.